Namaskar. How to Overcome Mental Tension by Swami Gokulanadaji Maharaj. Today we will continue with the chapter Stress and the Dynamics of Success. Maharaj refers once again to the discussion of the helpless, hopeless types here. He says, we can recall that such a personality, that is the hopeless, helpless types, negative mental makeup is based on the core belief that whatever he may do, the situation will not change for the better. The sense of hopelessness they suffer from is impossible to overcome. For instance, if a student constantly broods and is depressed, he will never be brilliant. He refuses to study or put in hard work because all his time is spent in complaining and he is incapable of achieving a good result. Maharaj says, I recollect an incident in my life. At the time I was appearing for my MA examination in philosophy. The venue was the famous Senate Hall. One of my batchmates, a very brilliant student, was sitting beside me during the examination. On the third day, the question paper was extremely tough. After some time, he muttered to me, I'm leaving the hall. The questions are terribly difficult. I know I cannot get a first class. I said, You are brilliant. Don't leave the hall. Keep up your spirit and try once more. He refused to listen to me. He was laboring under a feeling of hopelessness. He left the examination hall and had to pay a heavy price for it. Naturally, he lost a year. Again, the next year too, he could not get a first class. The first time he appeared, he got first class marks in all the papers, but failed to write one paper. If he had displayed a little patience and perseverance, his results would have been good. But his helpless and hopeless attitude was the cause of his downfall. It is obvious that hopelessness leads to a decrease in or withdrawal of mental energy. When a doctor prescribes a medicine, only a patient who is hopeful of recovery and has sufficient mental energy will benefit by it. Often it happens that a father encourages his son to study well, but in case the boy suffers from this feeling of hopelessness, his mental energy will slowly decline. This is what happened to my friend of the MA days. It was the failure of his mental energy which showed itself in the form of his lack of determination and made him leave the examination hall. Such a thing did happen to me too. When we had to face that tough paper at the MA examination, I was completely taken aback by the questions which no one expected. My first thought was to follow my friend. Had I done so, I think I would never have completed my post-graduation. Life took a different direction and I became a monk immediately after that. Had I walked out of the hall, I may not have had the opportunity to become a monk. One wrong decision would have wrecked my whole life. The duration of that examination was 4 hours. 15 minutes had gone in thinking what to do. Then I looked at the essays and thought that I should at least try to attempt one of them. I knew that all the other students were in the same plight, which gave me courage, and I made up my mind to try answering at least one question. Suddenly, my pranic energy came back and took me above the feeling of hopelessness. In turn, the energy traveled from the pranamaya to the manamaya and then to the vigyanmaya kosha, because I could arrive at the correct decision. There are times when our mind cannot decide and the next level, called the buddhi or the intellect, takes over. The buddhi has the deciding faculty. It enables us to make the correct decision. I can say that during the difficult examination at the Senate Hall, I appealed to my Vigyanmaya Kosha. I attempted an essay and in this paper I got very good marks. I had prepared a particular essay which did not figure in the question paper. This gave rise to the feeling of despair which I had to overcome. Physically, I was fine. That is, as far as the Annamaya Kosh was concerned, there was no problem. The pranic energy was also present because I had come prepared to write an examination. I needed the pranvayu, but the mind was not able to make a decision. Then I had to appeal to the Vigyanmaya Kosh to give me a decision. When I began to write, half an hour was gone and only 3.5 hours were left in which I had to complete the 4-hour essay. But there was a valuable lesson in this experience. Later, I always advised students never to give up hope, even when such things happen. Instead, they should always take a positive attitude. Situations can be overcome without losing hope, without succumbing to hopelessness. As I have said from my own experience, the body was all right. Had I been sick, I could not have appeared for the examination. The pranic energy was also in abundance because I finished a 4-hour paper in 3.5 hours. Mental energy was there and it helped me to appeal to the Vigyanmaya Kosh for making a right decision. After the examination, I left the results to the Almighty with the satisfaction that I had done justice to the topic. In other words, hope makes energy active and hopelessness leads to a decrease in or withdrawal of energy. If we give up hope, we shall not have sufficient energy to do any work. My friend gave up hope and his brain had no energy to function. His Manamaya Kosh and Vigyanmaya Kosh failed to help him. Pranic energy fell and as a result, he left the hall. When the body field or the Annamaya Kosh is no longer correctly maintained, the finer supportive fields such as Manamaya and Pranamaya Kosh are weakened. Therefore, the natural process of decay are accelerated and disease may readily occur. Often this phenomena of decaying process of our energy is specific. For example, a physician who practices what in these days is called holistic medicine once related to me the case of a woman with significant degenerative eye disorders. On inquiry, it was found out that at the root of the degeneration was the patient's unwillingness to look at things. She always suffered from a feeling of hopelessness. The ultimate physical malady of cancer in her eye was not a sudden phenomena. It was the effect of specific mental disruption. In such instances, there is a withdrawal of mental energy and subsequently the organ's specific reduction of the energy field. To counter this, the science of yoga talks about 2 more levels or sheeds that support the mind energy body complex. One is called the wisdom seed or the Vigyanmaya Kosh, the experience of a higher mind with intuition as mentioned earlier. Sometimes intuition is also insufficient. Therefore, we refer to the final blissful sheath or Anandamaya Kosh, which deals with transcendental consciousness. These 2 sheaths, that is, the Vigyanmaya Kosh and the Anandamaya Kosh, are what may be called the subtle body or Shukshma Sharir. It follows that when there are certain disruptions, like the times when we cease to find meaning in life or suffer from feelings of hopelessness or helplessness, we need these levels. Naturally, in such cases, we can take it for granted that there are corresponding imbalances in the mind-body energy complex, that is, the Pranamaya, Manamaya and the Annamaya Koshas. To explain the meaning of Shukshma Sharir, we should refer to Vedanta so that it can be easily understood. To recapitulate, Annamaya Kosh is the gross physical body. It consists of bones, flesh and so on. It exists and it dies. Pranamaya Kosh is that which activates all organs of action. It refers to the 5 organs of action. When the mind is united with the 5 organs of knowledge, it is called Manamaya Kosh. And when buddhi is connected with the 5 organs of knowledge, it is called Vijnanmaya Kosh. And the final sheath of consciousness is the Anandamaya Kosh. Atma is covered by all these 5 sheaths. They are called sheeds because they conceal the nature of the Atman, as a sheath covers a knife or a sword. But the Atman, which is beyond these Panchakoshas, is completely detached from all these coverings. The 5 layers mentioned above can well be compared to the 5 layers of clouds. When the sun is shining and the dense clouds come to obstruct the vision of the effulgent sun, we are unable to see the rays of the sun and say that there is no sun. Similarly, we cannot comprehend the presence of the Atman within us on account of the clouds of impurities of this life and the innumerable past lives and say that there is no Atman. We live under tremendous delusion. We commit the same mistake as when the sky is overcast, we deny the very existence of the sun. When there is only a thin layer of cloud, the sun is partially visible, as is the case of the Anandamaya Kosh, which is the closest to the Atman. The light that shines through these different layers differs in degree depending on the density of the clouds. If the cloud is a little thicker, it is like the Vijnanmaya Kosh. Still thicker, it is the Manamaya Kosh. Thicker than that, it is like the Pranamaya Kosh, and an absolute is the Annamaya Kosh. A person who identifies himself with the gross physical body will never have illumination. The self, when identified with the mind, creates doubt. A thinker is a doubter. The Vijnanmaya Kosh, or the sheath of the buddhi, is called the discriminating faculty and is finer than the mind. It is close to the Anandamaya Kosh and is the sheath of intellect which helps to arrive at a decision or to achieve certainty. To achieve certainty, therefore, the Atman uses the sheath of the intellect. The sheath of intellect or buddhi is extremely effulgent because of its proximity to the Supreme Self. Through the 5th and the final sheath of bliss, one experiences varying degrees of happiness. The chief feature of this sheath are rest and joy, such as we experience when we come into contact with an agreeable object. A fuller manifestation of the sheath of bliss is experienced in deep sleep. After waking from sleep, a person may remark that he slept happily. These 5 sheaths are all modifications of matter. The sheath of bliss is closest to the Atman, but it is not Atman itself. Like other sheaths, it is endowed with changing attributes, whereas the Atman is changeless. All the 5 sheaths have no permanent reality. Whatever reality they are perceived to possess is due to the fact that Atman is their substratum. The real glory of the Atman is unobstructed by any sheath. Through discrimination and non-attachment, self-control and meditation, a person no longer identifies himself with any of the sheaths but remains constantly absorbed in the self. Our goal should be to make the sheaths thinner and more transparent through japa, sadhana, sadhusang, discrimination and such other acts. When there are no more obstructing clouds, we shall be face to face with the truth. Maharaj says, from this brief analysis of the different sheaths, we come to the conclusion that to overcome mental tension, one has to take recourse to disciplines and remain in complete communion with the self. We suffer from tension because we attach reality to the sheath. Rising above these and trying to be absorbed in our own self is a cure to outside agitations, excitements. Once we admit the reality of the self, These external upheavals cannot touch us. Finally, let us recall the words of Sri Ramakrishna. He used to say that a person's bondage is in the mind and liberation is also in the mind. If the mind is Shuddha or pure, a person can realize the Atman. If the mind is covered with impurities, it is not possible to realize the self-shining Atman within. All problems of the mind are summed up in this important idea. How wonderfully Maharaj gives an explanation of the practical application of Vedanta in our lives. Hope you have enjoyed this lecture. Please stay tuned to Devakshar. Do share and like the videos and subscribe to our channel Devakshar. Thank you for being with us.